When we were last together, I offered you a humble lesson on the difference between essential arguments and non-essential arguments. And I think that's an important thing to understand. Today's video might well be dubbed the many temptations available to anyone who aspires to be a rhetorician. They're as old as the hills, and they're very important to recognize. Fallacies of logic is where I want to end up today. And you need to be able to recognize them in your own writing. You also need to be able to recognize them in the prose of other people, or the discourse of other people, maybe a political speech. You can fall for them if you're not paying attention. Before I go there, I'd like to talk to you about one of the challenges that I know I'm going to see in the papers that I have coming here, these persuasive papers, because I've seen them before. And that is the ungrounded claim. And it's okay. I'll be very gentle. I'll put a little smiley in the margin, maybe with a little question mark above my head for all you face-to-face people that are going to get physical papers. But I'm thinking of, I saw two in a row a year ago when I was teaching at St. Cloud State, kind of moving my way from my old teaching life towards this one that I just love, my job at Central Lakes College. I had two consecutive papers from St. Cloud State students. I'm not putting St. Cloud State down, and I'm not putting these students down either. But I pick up one paper, and I'm reading along, and the student says, "You know what, America's the drunkest country on earth." I went, "Okay, really? Are you sure?" So, you go to Google, and I found out that, we're not even within striking range. I think Moldova, Lithuania, Estonia, Russia, Iceland, England, a bunch of countries ahead of us. The student just went out there and just made this claim, no backing whatsoever. I think I'd be lying if I said it was the very next paper, but it wasn't more than 3 or 4 papers later where I pick an essay up and this writer asserted, without any grounding or backing whatsoever, America's the fattest country in the whole world. Okay, are you sure about that? You know what, we're not even within striking range, but I guess we are moving up. I think the answer, if my research was correct when I Googled it, was American Samoa. Pacific Southeast Islands, they're getting a lot of processed food that they're not used to, and they're getting heavy as a result. But those are kind of what I'm talking about here. Ungrounded claims mean nothing. You want something backing up what you're saying, particularly in argumentation and persuasion. Fallacies of reasoning are numerous, and I'm not going to break them into the categories that I've been trained to break them into. I just kind of want to give you a smattering of what they are and how they work. You've probably seen them before. Yes, there are material fallacies and there are psychological fallacies, etc. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of a list of the ones that I tend to see the most often. And again, you want to avoid them in your own prose, and you want to recognize them when people are using them on you. One of the famous ones is the faulty cause, faulty causation. It's post hoc ergo propter hoc, if you know Latin, and I don't, so I don't even know why I said that. But it has to do with cause effects that don't really line up. If you ever hear somebody say, "Yep, it's raining because I washed my car," well, we know what that means. There's irony there. You don't want it to rain after you wash your car, but the washing of the car is not the cause of that effect. It's just not going to work. I see these once in a while. One I see a lot is the second one I've got queued up in my head. It's the either-or fallacy. This one's really tempting. You're arguing along with someone, maybe in a paper or maybe face-to-face. And the trick here is to reduce your audience's choice to 2 things, right? You'll say it's either this or this. And really bright people, it's astonishing how easily bright people can forget the range and the shades of difference between those 2 things. But if you reduce someone's choices to 2, you'd be surprised how often they'll be tempted to use them. Now, I know some of you have young children because I've read about it in your journals. I always think of my younger son, William. You saw him in a previous video. He's 14 now, but when he was a little guy, I was just telling my face-to-face students this. I'd say, "Time for a nap, little man. Time for you to sleep for a little while." And he'd say, "I don't want a nap. I'm not tired." He'd be running around the house wrecking stuff because he was tired. And for almost a month, he actually fell for this. I'd say, "Okay, little dude, how about this? You can go to sleep with Bear, or you can go to sleep with Bunny." For a month, I'm telling you, he would say, "I'll go to sleep with Bear." He would forget that he wasn't tired at all, and he would walk right up the stairs with Bear, pass out in his bed for 2 hours, and come out later, wondering where his snack was. The either-or fallacy, it's pretty famous. see often too, and these are all kind of related, they kind of dovetail together, the big faulty generalization, right? And I'm looking towards the farm down here where I call him my farmer because he is my farmer. I'm thinking of him, you know, just as an example. If you heard him speak, you know, he's Stearns County farmer. He's in his late 60s, salt of the earth, man. He just rose up right out of this corn, right out of this beautiful country that I live in. But if you heard him speak, you might make the assumption that he's not very bright. I remember some years ago we were standing at the end of our driveways and we got out of our pickup trucks and somebody down the highway was power washing their deck. I said the obvious, looks like Rick is power washing his deck. And my sweet farmer looked at that and he said, "Yup, he must be gonna paint it. He must be gonna paint it." What tense is that? I have no idea. You know, you'd think as an English teacher I would say, that's not grammatical, man. Could you speak properly? But when I heard the music of that, I almost wanted him to say it again. He must be gonna paint it. I just loved it. And you could say, in the way of a faulty generalization, well, people that speak with poor grammar, they're not very bright. Well, let me tell you something. He is really smart. He's not going to be lecturing on rhetoric anytime soon, but in terms of knowledge of living in the world and living in the country, I think he's a genius. A few years ago, when a draft horse wandered off the neighbor's farm over here and ended up falling down into the peat bog, only this guy, only my farmer, Jim Lemke, knew what to do. He knew how to get that draft horse out of that bog safely. It wasn't pretty. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but it required a skid loader and all the log chain we could pull together on this farm. Got the horse out okay because he just knew what to do. Another good one, another one I see real often is ad hominem, which means literally an attack to the man or against the man. We'll make it gender inclusive because it's 21st century, to the person. When you attack a person, when you say in an argument, "You're stupid, you're an idiot," you're attacking that person. You really got to watch that. My face-to-face students heard a real long story not too long ago about some streakers that terrorized a basketball game when I was a senior. And because I was the opinion editor of the paper, I'm sure you can imagine that, I had to defend them. They got in a lot of trouble. I wrote this whole essay that really was helpful. I had some really good arguments. Let's not be too hard on them. You've kicked them out of every sport they've ever been in. You kicked them out of National Honor Society. And I had this great line. I said, are we really going to punish them as men for something they did impulsively as boys? Sounds pretty good, right? Well, it did until I got to the last paragraph where I just had to pull the trigger on an ad hominem argument. And I typed something along the lines of, I think we need to ask ourselves as a community one important question. What possessed Mr. Growth, the principal rather, what possessed Mr. Growth to chase 3 naked boys into that dark, cold night? Well, you know how that went. I could look at that and go, I was 18, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was pushing a button called homophobia through the control panel, through the floor, into the foundation of that high school and raised all sorts of heck. Why did I do that? You don't need to attack people. Stick with the issue. Anytime you attack a person instead of what you're arguing about, it's another smoke screen, so to speak. Ad populum is the same thing. Instead of attacking a person, you go after a group and vilify them, demonize them. You say all those Republicans, all those Democrats, all those teenagers, all those teachers, right? It's the same thing. I know in 8th grade you heard about Bandwagon, well, which is the appeal that runs along the lines of, well, everyone else is doing it. Why can't I do it? Every teenager of the world has said, all my friends are going to the Smashing Pumpkins concert. Why can't I go? Well, that doesn't mean that you should go. We have the rigged question too, which is famously the question that incriminates either way you answer it. If a lawyer in a courtroom, I just pulled this example out of a book I was just reading on rhetoric. If a lawyer approaches a man and says, "Hey, have you stopped beating your wife?" Either way, that person is indicted. That guy's indicted in the answer. If he says, "Yes, I've stopped," he's acknowledged having done it. If he says no, it means he's still doing it. So you got to watch those. A good one, because I'm a very emotional person and I'm susceptible to these, is an appeal to pity, which kind of smells like faulty cause once you start delving into it. I had a kind of a frustrating moment at Central Lakes College last spring. I kind of hope that people come to my classes. And attendance is important, you know that. And I had a young person say, if you flunk me in Comp 1, I'm not going to graduate from high school. Well, that's definitely an appeal to pity. But I had to say to the person, and teachers do this every year in all the schools of the world, I'm sorry, you've missed class for 2.5 months. Am I the cause of that effect? No. And just probably enough of these. I'm ending with unpleasant examples. Let's talk about something a little bit more positive. Not only do you need to be able to recognize these and use them, maybe on people who aren't being aware, you also want to be conscious of the idea of the refutation. And that's what we'll end this little video on. The refutatio, or the refutation, is absolutely a vital thing to consider. That doesn't mean you have to do it. When you're arguing, you need to know the souls of who you're arguing against. That's right out of Plato's Phaedrus, the Platonic dialogue called the Phaedrus. You must know the souls to whom you're appealing. If you know your souls, if you know what they're thinking, or what they might believe in terms of values and opinions, you can anticipate and refute what their rebuttals are going to be to you. In the writing of a persuasive paper, you've really got a couple of options. You can doggedly argue only your side of the deal, right? You can argue your side of the coin, so to speak. And you can not be aware of what the people might be saying who want to confute you, to stand against you. There's something psychological that's kind of cool, though, that you can do. And the second paragraph is a really good place to do this. You announce your topic, you announce your thesis, and then you move into the second paragraph. And then what you do is you pick a point of the opposition and you argue it for just a little while. To the reader, it seems like you're being fair. The reader says, well, look at this. What a fair arguer. He's even giving a little airtime to his adversaries. Is that what you're doing? Or are you doing this? Are you picking a weak point of the opposition? You introduce it in the second paragraph. And then halfway through that paragraph, you trash it, all right? You wreck it, and then you plunge on with your own arguments. It really is cool. It's a great trick. It's not illegal either. I think it's illegal. Beware of introducing the refutation late in the paper. I see this year after year after year. Young person or any person will be writing along, they'll get to the end of the paper, and they'll start running out of things to say. And then all of a sudden they'll start arguing the opposition. And sometimes they'll pick a really good point. On the other hand, well, late in the paper is not the time to do that. I just sit there going, God, you just shot yourself in the foot. Why did you do that? So, I'm supposed to sum this up. Watch ungrounded claims. Be conscious of the fallacies either coming at you or flying out of your pen or your fingertips. And give that refutation a whirl. It's cool.